Thanks a lot. So I'm not from Darmstadt city. I'm working for the Geological Survey of the federal state of Hesse. But yeah, we are involved in a project that is addressing Darmstadt, and that's why I wish to report something about the urban geology and its applications for the case study of Darmstadt. So first of all, I need to talk about my personal perception of geology, and also the perception I gained in the last years whenever I talk to people. The first thing, what we see as geologists, is that geology is very, very important. That's good. The civil engineers, they say we can cope with any issue arising from geological conditions. That does mean we do not need to know that much about geology. That's what they often said. The urban planners and the municipalities, they say geology is very complicated and available information mostly some kind of vague and hard to understand. But we would be happy to have useful geological information available. And that's why I personally, why I'm happy that in Norway there are municipal geologists working. That's something new to me, that's interesting. And yeah, I like it. So I think the standing of geology in an urban context, it could be better. And in the end, the question arises, which benefit can be provided by geological information? And that's why I think we need applications. Good. So that's something everybody knows. That's the map showing the development of population for Germany until 2030. The reddish area show a decrease and the bluish area an increase of population. We all know that the urban areas get more and more important, and I would like to draw your attention to this area down there, which is the metropolitan area of Frankfurt, Rhine-Main. That's how it is called. There's some 6 million people living. As the bigger cities, we have Mainz. That's the place I live. Maybe you've heard about it last week when this company BioNTech announced that they invented this corona vaccine. Then we have Wiesbaden. That's the capital of the federal state of Hesse, where my geological survey is located. Everybody might know Frankfurt, and down there, there's Darmstadt. And Darmstadt is a quite dynamic city. I will get back to this later on. Why have we chosen Darmstadt? Because the geological setting, the conditions are very, very complex. What you can see is an image, a screenshot from a 3D model. And we see Darmstadt located up there, surrounded by these reddish rocks. This is the so-called Rotliegend. And this Rotliegend subsided to the west down to around about 2,000 meters below the surface due to this upper Rhinegraben. And that's where the city is located on top of. It's located on top of the eastern masterfold of this upper Rhinegraben. And that's why we have chosen it, because of its complexity and all the geological phenomena we can investigate. The city itself, as I mentioned, is located right on top of this masterfold. We have mountains to the right, which is bedrock, and we have the graben to the left, which is made up of sediments. And a more close but still very general look on geology is something you can see here. We have quaternary, some tertiary sediments in the graben area, while the eastern part is made up of crystalline, of granite diorite, and Permian rocks. Looks not too complicated, but in the end it is. That's something we have found out when we started modeling. We used 1,800 drillings roundabout. A few of them have been available from our drilling database from the Geological Survey, and the majority came from the city of Darmstadt. And I'm happy for all of you dealing with digital data. We had to digitize data first. So mostly the drillings from the city of Darmstadt have been provided as PDFs. So we had to scan, and we had to stratify and apply this specific key for describing geological deposits for our federal state. And in the end, it turned out that the stratigraphic horizons could not be modeled because of the complexity of information. The drillings are very heterogeneous, and we were not able to identify all the target horizons we would have needed to identify. And that's why we aggregated the data, and that's why we went a step back. So we parameterized the drillings according to the permeability of the specific units. And that's what can be seen here. So the model is covering the upper 30 meters. That's what the city planners say is the important area, thinking of all the work going on in an urban area. And here we have some good information about the permeability, the so-called KF value, which is quite useful. We implemented furthermore some technical infrastructure. So this brown lines, they indicate or they represent the sewage system, and we put all of it in this 3D model. We made it in 3D object and blended it with the geologic information, which can be seen as a fence diagram here. And we also added the foundations, like it can be seen for the concrete site in the center of the figure. The yellow lines is the power supply, and the blue lines, that's the water supply. And the transparent blue surface, that's the groundwater surface, as it has been given in October 2015. Yeah, and that's another view to this foundation of the concrete site, Darmstadt, and how we made it part of the geologic volume. The voxels that can be seen are representing the geologic strata, and showing the conductivity or the permeability from blue, very good, to poor, which is more brown. And this information is quite helpful. We have at the moment, we have implemented geologic information, we have implemented hydrogeologic information and technical infrastructure. And from these data, we created some applications, which is the interaction areas between groundwater and the sewage system. That's quite important for the city, as well as the interaction areas between groundwater and foundations. That's also important for BIM. Then we have the permeability in general, and we have infiltration areas. It's interesting to see about something about these infiltration areas, because the city is growing from 2010 to 2016 by 11.4%. At the same time, the surface ceiling decreased by 5%. That's what the people in charge told me recently. I think that's quite impressive. And to support this kind of work they are doing every day, we decided to put all this into a 3D database, which in our case is GST, and blended with other data like maps and surface models and things like this. We are able to visualize content through a web browser, and this is some very useful tool because it supports also some virtual drillings and some cross sections which can be used for reporting or planning, and that's what the city is doing every day. Yeah, but we still have issues. The data interoperability is a big issue. We need to combine our 3D data with 3D models, city models, and we need to visualize this content on some other platforms like ArcGIS, ArcGIS Pro. I really like the approaches done by the TNO in the Netherlands. That looks very, very good, and I think it's worth to also try it for this area. And that's something we are doing at the moment. Good, but we have another topic I wish to get back to, and this is radon. I just saw it on one slide from the presentation in Norway, and it has not been mentioned, but it is very, very important. I think that's a huge chance for geology, for urban geology. You might know that there's a new treaty of the EU Commission. This is the 2013-59 Euratom Treaty, which means that European member states must update radiation protection laws to account for health risk of the exposure to elevated indoor radon levels and prepare national radon action plans. It sounds very, very important. So that's what we did in Germany, and I think that's what every other country in Europe needs to do. And we need to identify radon-prone areas, and those areas show radon concentrations as an annual average in a significant number of buildings with more than 300 becquerel per cubic meter. So this is the number, 300 becquerel per cubic meter. And those areas, they must be determined until the end of this year. And the action required then starts from the 1st of January in 2021. And this action is quite a lot of things to do for those cities or counties which are affected in the end, which will be so-called radon protection areas. And here we start, or we need to get back to geology. I was listening to a lot of anthropogenic issues, anthropogenic deposits, which is very important, but as geologists, we never should forget about the geogenic deposits, which is the geological deposits we have. And there's a lot of radioactivity coming from the rocks. 60% of natural radiation is coming from the elements uranium and thorium. And those elements, they occur with a few parts per million in almost every rock type bound in the crystal lattice of certain minerals such as feldspar, zircon, monazite, titanite, and so on. That's what you know as well. And we can differentiate between the concentrations of thorium in blue and uranium in light, bright brownish colors according to the type of rock. So there's the most that can be seen in the granites, and then we have some higher concentrations of thorium in the claystone, while the concentration of uranium is less in the sandstone. But in which way ever, these radionuclides, they are present and they are given. And if we bring this information into the geological maps we have, and again, in the center parts up there, you can see Darmstadt, and you can see that Darmstadt is surrounded by rocks which keep quite a lot of these uranium and thorium contents, depending on the type of rock. The Rotliegend sandstone does have most of the thorium in comparison to the other rocks, diorite, quartz diorite, granite, but also the uranium content is pretty high in the Rotliegend rocks. So this stuff is located up there in the mountains in the eastern part of the city of Darmstadt, but it's going to be dislocated. We have thorium and uranium concentrations coming from geochemical analysis, and this weathered rock is dislocated into the valley, into the graben, and it can be seen, and that's our hypothesis, it can be seen in the 3D models as well, indicated by those sediments which show a higher conductivity, because the grain size of this dislocated material is known as grain caused. It's the so-called, we call it Gruß in German. So we get valuable information from the 3D models, maybe where to go and where to measure radon more detailed than in other parts of such an urban area. We create maps that can be seen to the right that help us to locate those potential areas on the surface. We go there and we measure. Now that's coming from the rocks. And then we have the tectonic features. We have one concrete site in Darmstadt, which is the Darmstadtium. And there we have installed a measurement device for microtectonic movements with our colleagues from the Czech Republic. And these microtectonic movements, they indicate that this fault is a recent active fault. So we made a soil gas measurement. We put in some measurement device into the soil, and we derived the number of 340,000 becquerel per cubic meter air, which is soil air in this case, but if we measure the room air right beside, in the building, inside the building, we have some concentration of radon, which is going up to almost 22,000. And this is significantly high. As you know, as you remember, the reference is 300 becquerel per cubic meter. So that's a very important thing to know, because we need to do something about these high radon concentrations. We have other faults in the city. At least these faults are indicated on the geological maps. We do not know precisely their location, their orientation, and their function. Are they active or not? But we can use available information to track it down and to deepen our understanding. And here we have another section, some radon measurements, a radon profile. And as you can see, we have, that's the blue line down there. We have quite high concentrations right on top of the fault, or at least on top of the area where you think the fault is located. This is interesting because we have in many cities, in many urban areas, we have tectonics, and that's the way it is. And it's more important in the Scandinavian countries, more important than in Germany. It might be more important in the Baltic region and the southeastern part of Europe, but we also have the problem in Germany. So the conclusions, the determination of radon protection areas is based on a radon potential map, which is considering geology in a way. And this determination is more statistics, not really sticking to the conditions on site. So, of course, in the end, this radon protection, it's most important where people are living, and this is the urban areas. And we have very high variations of radon concentrations in soil, like we have maybe only limited knowledge about the deposits and the tectonics. And this, to me, is a very big challenge and a chance for the urban geology. And what is the benefit? The remediation of affected buildings, that's about 2 to 4 times more expensive than awareness and prevention. And this is, I mean, I think a good number to get into discussions with people in charge. Yeah, and if you're interested in the study or radon in urban areas in general, get in touch. Thanks a lot.